unable to fight where love takes you. Feels like it's all falling apart. Maybe it's all coming together. Feels like it's all falling apart.
Dunno. What, sorry. I think there's always been a very awkward relationship between me and my mum. There's a lot that's unsaid. If I was dying and she was next to my bed, I would probably, I think my heart would probably collapse into some kind of submission.
I think I was fearful of my father in many ways. I think when it's a lot of tiptoeing and trying to sort of be the perfect little girl, a lot of trying to please, there's ways of getting love because he was so shut down in so many ways and so introvert, that it was trying to sort of find things or ways into him, things that he would react to, respond to.
I will say to her, Mom, I understood you. After a lot of years, I understood you. Now, it took time, a lot of time, but now I know.
He didn't believe in himself. And I think his lack of self-confidence is 100% connected to the way my father handled him. Although he was born, probably, the whole question of nature and nurture, he was born very sensitive. But he was the last guy that was waiting for an education like a father like that.
It wasn't easy to trust the man I were with, but it was easy for me to give them love. To express love for me wasn't a problem. To be to trust what was going to happen in these feelings that so strong was a bit more difficult.
I think by knowing yourself, the capacity for love is greater. But I think that what is much less is one's patience when things aren't working out. That when you're banging your head against a wall.
Seems we've triggered all the hurt that resides in us. Seems we're stubborn and there's so much pride in us that we failed to let our love overflow. God only knows. Put an end to this misery. My energy's been drained. Can't even get myself down the street.
I resist my love for my mum very much. And it's probably so ingrained in my character that it is me. It is the fuel for my anger and for my searching in life. All the problems I have, which I now embrace, is probably because of my mum.
The way in which anyone loves is to a large extent created by the way they're loved by their parents or not loved.
In Russia, I'm not home. In Germany, sometimes I feel me like cosmopolitan. I have a lot of identity. I'm home in this place if I feel me good, for example.
So he was only, you have to imagine where you don't feel confident about yourself and you have a father who is very dominant and only criticizing and never saying you're doing the right things. It's a long life struggle, to put it very mildly. So he escaped, of course, in alcohol, sex, drugs, everything. And everyone in my family knew he would die too young. But we expected to be something else.
We try and make an identity for ourselves. And we use this with whatever medium that we get into as artists, photographers, painters, writers, filmmakers, in a way that our medium creates our identity, but paradoxically it also reveals our identity. And I think that the more that it reveals, the less that the medium itself becomes relevant. I've been thinking a lot about that. What is relevant is really why it is that we even choose the mediums that we do, the photographies, the filmmaking, the artists, painting, whatever, why we even do that in the first place. I mean, that's got to be the big question, you know. I mean, it wasn't because when you were 14 you thought it looked really cool. I mean, there was a fundamental, deep-seated reason for it. Because it's part of the journey. It's our journey. It's the thing that we chose, the tool that we chose to make sense of it all.
I must see you today. Drop everything. Come into my arms. Understand me completely. Follow the way. Roll my body, roll my mind.
Relationship between my parents was, my father was loving my mom since he was 12, and my mom never loved him. And I know this. My mom loved another guy. He's died. It's another story. Really crazy story, but this is I know about my parents.
I lost my dad a year ago, so I feel like I've lost my biggest fan, and that's not so easy. But at the same time, I haven't felt at all that he wasn't there anymore. He's very, very close all the time, and I've proof of it every day, and I'm not an extremely mystical person, but I really feel that the people you love stay with you. Maybe not forever, but they stay around you for quite a while to see if you're okay.
I romanticized my father without knowing him. He was that part of my identity that I thought was missing. I mean, an absolute feeling of lack, of loss. Things that I now embrace. I mean, I embrace that. I embrace the uncertainty that not having a father around gave me. I embrace that now. I see that as quite a strong thing. So not having has actually made that into something which has made me stronger. Even when I'm vulnerable, I feel strong. And I might have been disappointed with my father, actually. And I think that I mean, it's interesting. When I think that, I mean, obviously I don't believe in anything as in a god or anything, but I often think to myself, if I ever met him again, even though he's dead, I'd fucking hit him really hard.
Wanna dream all day about you. Pinch myself when I'm in your arms. Race you to the park. Took for hours in the dark. See you walk towards me, right? Poetry as you walk away. I need your love. I'm not being needy. I need your love. I'm not being needy. Dead into the depths of you. Fill my prayers with hopes for me and you. Go everywhere beyond.
Is there anything that I wish I had said on my dad's deathbed? I think that it was probably all said. I think there was a lot. They put him in an artificial coma to kind of allegedly, make his suffering less, which I don't know whether that was the case or not, but so much is said, beyond words. There's so much communication that happens on another level at that moment, and it was probably the moment of truest communication that I've ever had with him, and of most closeness. I remember just holding his hand and feeling like, I've never really, never really held this hand before, really. It was like soft and kind of, podgy. There was something podgy about it.
I was with my father as he died, literally with him. And I'm really grateful for that, but it was terrible. Because he was frightened, but he was not a man who would ever show his fear. And he was in a lot of pain. So he was fighting against dying, I think because he was frightened. And he was haunted by ghosts from his childhood that came up as he was delirious. He was terrified he was going to encounter those things if he allowed himself to die. And it was horrible to see him terrified about what was on the other side. And I said to him, this is the way you'd want it to happen. You're the father of this family. You'd want to be the first one to die. You've been a great father to us. You've been a lovely father to me. So difficult to see him, and I held his hands. And then he died. And it's strange, I had this feeling after he died, like a voice that said to me, do you have the courage to believe that that's all there is?
Being born is a tragedy is because it's a tragedy because we have no choice in the matter. We have no choice where we end up. The spontaneity of it is incredible. It's extraordinary. It's a disaster. It's scary. Out of it all, we come to this. We're born to parents, to a mother, to an environment, to a culture, that we look a particular way, that we may be fortunate enough to have particular looks or not, because we live in a superficial world. All these things are the tragedy of life, really, and we live with that tragedy for the rest of our lives. And which is interesting to think that we fight, we resist essentially who we are, and that we endlessly pursue this sense of finding ourselves when we're already found.
No, I can feel his presence, and I can feel what he pushed me towards. You know, beautiful when he was young, but that's the last year. Very meditative and very wise. He was an extremely bright man, and I think he had accepted what life gave him, the good things and the bad things. And I always said, because he was in a wheelchair the last few years, and I always said, aren't you bored and aren't you feeling claustrophobic or anything like this? And he said, no, because I'm so lucky, I'm loved, and I love people, and I have all these things that I'm interested in. And so he was, you know, he would read a poetry and look at a stone. He loved stone.
It wasn't my intention to play with your heart. It wasn't my intention to make promises I never start. I was numb, doing stuff so dumb.
They warned him that he had to check his skin yearly, and this was typical something he avoided, because some authority asked him something and he didn't want to do it. If he had him checked, he was still alive. So I think there is a connection. I always worried about him. He was a pain in my ass. He was very difficult for my sisters, for my parents. We were always worrying. We were always advising him to go to a psychiatrist or whatever, and he never listened, and he kept being, very complicated, and he was getting more and more addicted, and I knew he would be on the streets when it would have ended a few years more.
If I ever saw my father again, which is impossible because he's dead, but if I ever did, I'd hit him fucking hard, and then I'd probably pick him up. Just to say that, you weren't strong enough, just because my mum scared you away, that you allowed that to stop you from seeing your son. I think it's disgraceful. I mean, it's cowardly. I would never have done that with my daughter, ever. And he deserves to be, punished for that by me.
But I think it affected me a lot, not having that contact in the first years, and then going away to school at 7. If the question is, does how your parents love you affect how you love? The answer is yes. I believe that you learn how to become attached.
Somebody told to my dad, his name was Victor, how you can live with a woman, she don't love you? And his answer was, I'm a very happy person because I live with a woman which I love. It's more important. This is interesting answer to understand a relationship sometimes.
His resentment, the fact that he couldn't forgive, I think. He was so hurt.
For me, I think I was closer in mind, way of expression, and way to look at life. I was closer to my dad. I look more like my mother, but I was closer to my dad. So to me, it was a much more peaceful relationship. My mother was extremely beautiful, but like extremely beautiful, like Hollywood star. And therefore it was, I wouldn't say competitive because she wasn't obvious in that, but I always felt like I wasn't as good, you know. With my dad, he loved me so much that I was just the most beautiful person in the world. I'm sorry. If when you're little with someone that's exceptional and that has the courage my dad had, because he had so much courage through all these things, then most of the men you choose, even if they're good, they sound so bland. You know, they were never as smart, they were never as charming, they were never as courageous. They didn't have this sense of dignity that men had at the time, you know, in a certain background. To me, he was a true aristocrat, you know, but a true one, not like a lot of the ones you see today. He had lost, you know, his family had lost all their money when they left Romania. They were based in Romania at the time. He was interested in anybody, the guys who gathers the garbage in the mornings, the most incredible physician, an artist, me. You know, he was just a very, very interesting, human and intelligent person. Really incredible. And when he died, my task was to write a letter that I would read when he was buried, you know. And it was funny because it was so easy. I just did it in 10 seconds and everybody said, my God, it's incredible. But it was so easy because he was such a giving person. That's what love is.
You help child, I think, through sacrifice, through giving, through actually doing stuff, through being there, through turning up, through being patient, through knowing yourself and not putting your shit on them. Not that I'm any expert.
He asked me, because he didn't trust my father in this, he asked me to take care that he wouldn't suffer too much. And then the last night of his life, the doctor came to me and she asked if it's okay. Probably it's the his time is up now. He was suffering so intense. So the doctor and I said to each other, yeah, let's stop his suffering, which was not real euthanasia, but you know, a mild. You know, his time was up, and he could have lived a few weeks more, but he was suffering heavily. And so I was with him the last hours of his life. The last thing I did with him was making a joint, because he was addicted to hashish, and I put joint in his mouth so he could have a last sniff of his joint. Some story, huh?
If you know who you are and you can be centered, love comes from a very different place, because you're not looking for the other person to kind of give you something that you feel you don't have, or like you're filling some hole or gap in you, you know, kind of you're projecting something onto the other person, expecting them to be that for you.
Being in love makes you selfish to everyone except the person you're in love with. I don't know, you know, there's in love where you're crazy in love, and then you're probably in love with a projection that you have of an ideal life, of a life without suffering, and that always comes to a crash at some point. But hopefully what attracts you to that person is sufficiently resonant or sufficiently real to allow a real relationship. But as my Arab friends in the village in Egypt would say, passion only lasts 1,000 days. That's 3 years. The maximum. passion lasts 1,000 days. That's when real love can come in, which is not about being in love with a projection of your own ideal.
Oh, anger and sex. Anger and sex. It's a difficult one. Anger and sex and death. I relate to.
In what way?
Pardon. Because it is entering sex, orgasm, is really entering into a territory of the unconscious that is blind, I think. I mean, it's the point where you don't see, and I kind of feel that's sort of what death would be like in a way. I think it would be, and as I said before, I think that it's I mean, death is our purpose.
I need a man for good sex, not for love. This is what I understood. I'm 40 now. I start to thinking about.
I'm happy now because my father is much better.
Time again I look at you. I know there's no pretend. Time. Things all add up for a change.
The moment of orgasm comes close to probably that experience of death, a relief. I mean, an absolute relief. I think death is probably an absolute relief. It really is a sort of just a letting go.
In love that I experience pains with women can be very painful. Love, broken heart.
At you, I know there's no pretend. Time. Things all add up for a change.
Maybe it isn't a question of making peace with the past. Maybe it's a question of well, certainly peace of mind is a very important thing. I'm not ready to make peace with the past, but maybe I will at some point.
I am in this accept part of me, and then I lost my angst. I don't know, angst is, I think, in all languages, angst, German word. Still thinking in relationship between two persons, if we're only think as man and woman, and forgot completely that we are humans all together, it's a lot of mistakes. The all wars and stuff, bad stuff in the world is coming from this, because we forgot to be human. This was my idea.
Classical. The strongest love, strongest passion is mostly a relationship that can't stay for longer than maximum few years. I can't believe in a concept where there is a very, very strong love, and at the same time, the pretension to have it last long.
Feels like it's the one. You can't believe what's begun. And the words of his kiss, words of his kiss. Words of his kiss, words of his kiss. All that up for a change.
I probably just want to hold her. And I think, that's what I should be doing. I should be doing that. And the last time I saw my mother, I realised that while she was very strange with me, slightly irritated in a way, it's because she's a little bit threatened by me. So in some ways I have to stupefy myself. I have to get down on this level of watching EastEnders or knowing what's going on in Pop Idols or what the fuck it is, I don't know. Because this is all I'm hearing all the time. And so I have to get on that level. And at one time I refused. Absolutely I wouldn't get on that level at all, and I would use my intellectual superiority to bring the whole thing down, to throw a hand grenade in it all. But I suppose in the equation of things, as an intellectual person, I suppose, if I've learnt anything, then it's to be humble at the right times, to be a bit understanding of other people. And I should really be understanding of my mum.
And I think maybe if you know that everything is impermanent, so it frees you from expectations.
Relationship between boys and girls, that's normal way, and understand we are boy, girl, woman, man, and at the same time we are human.
And the week goes so slow, and I feel so alone, aching, be humbled. My man had other plans, some say. He's gone away for good. Something inside knew he would. I don't know whether it's yesterday, today, tomorrow. I don't know whether it's yesterday, today, tomorrow. I don't know whether it's yesterday, today, tomorrow. I don't know whether it's yesterday, today, tomorrow.
There are pains inside, and perhaps it's necessary to fight and to create an own personality.
You need somebody who loves you. It can be a dog.
Many books and movies about the subject that the ultimate love is too exhausting. Ultimate love is too exhausting.
Why do you think it's so hard to trust? Is it because of the nature of man? No, I don't think men and women are different. I think they are what they are, and they are different in many perspectives, but I think men are as capable of loving as women are. It's just that they are not as... they haven't been raised most of the time, at least the men of my generation, to express it as much as we did. And also, I feel that men have something generally, not always, but generally a bit stronger, driven by sexuality. Women have tendency to love in a more, I would say almost intellectual way. It's very mental. And men have a tendency to love in a more physical way. And therefore they get more easily distracted from the person they love. Now, it's I think now it's more peaceful. Again, it's maybe less driven by this hormonal state, you know, you're in when you're young. And also because I've probably suffered and seen people suffer probably more than I have, I think it's more driven by thoughts than it used to be. Chance in my life to be loved by someone entirely.
A great, master of the past of the Buddhist tradition once said that the moment we think it's confusion and the moment we speak it's contradiction. And so that there is no real communication. And if you think about that, so there's only miscommunication. So either we have a successful miscommunication or we have a unsuccessful miscommunication. And again, it frees you from the expectation that you're gonna get a real thing from the other person or what you think is real, because it's impossible, And
lie with me. Don't say a word. Your eyes so full of confusion and fear. I'm feeling so much. I shed a tear. Inside, you belong, but outside, we blow it every time. Lie with me. Don't say a word. Take the ring from my finger, darling. We've tried so hard. Let's let go for real this time. Inside me, you belong.
Respect to each other. Don't forget.
We blow
Respect
it every time.
and respect us. Don't forget.
We blow it every time.
Only men and women have our play.
Lots of time.
Take the ring back to
Control myself there. I thought I'm going to make the same mistake. So I hope I didn't push it too hard actually. But sometimes I did. Now and then I did. Now and then I did. Especially the first one, who is mostly the victim.
You belong.
So we have a good relationship as adults, we can hang out and enjoy each other, but that still doesn't deny the fact that it took 35 years to understand that part of my problem with loving women in my life related to something
what you do to me.
To notice that history itself, that history was repeating. Because I was tough on my sons too, demanding, very demanding. And I really had to control myself there. I thought I'm going to make the same mistake. So I hope I didn't push it too hard actually, but sometimes I did. Now and then I did. Now and then I did, especially the first one, who is mostly the victim.
I mean, it's the simplest question. Who are you? I don't know. It's still the hardest question to answer. I can't answer it.